In the quiet hum of our modern world, a disquieting thought often whispers, could it happen again? The specter of global conflict, of a third world war, feels chillingly real amidst today's fractured geopolitics. But to understand tomorrow, we must first confront yesterday. To truly grasp the fragility of peace, we must return to a pivotal moment that reshaped civilization, a moment born from the ashes of one great war, which inadvertently ignited the fuse for another. Our journey begins not with a bang, but with a pen stroke in a grand hall, setting the stage for the darkest chapter in human history. June 28, 1919. The Palace of Versailles, France. Dignitaries from victorious Allied powers gathered to sign the treaty that would formally end World War I. But for Germany, this wasn't peace, it was punitive retribution. Stripped of territories, burdened with immense reparations, and forced to accept sole blame for the war, the German public felt betrayed and humiliated. Figures like John Maynard Keynes, a British economist, warned that the treaty's harsh terms would only foster resentment, making future conflict inevitable. He argued that it was less a peace treaty and more a prescription for disaster, setting the stage for deep-seated grievances. The new Weimar Republic in Germany struggled under the weight of the Versailles Treaty. Hyperinflation crippled the economy, making the currency virtually worthless. Bread cost millions of marks, savings evaporated overnight, and widespread poverty fueled social unrest. Political extremism, both from the left and the right, began to flourish in this fertile ground of despair. Demagogues rose, promising a return to national pride and economic stability, preying on the frustrations of a populace feeling abandoned and oppressed. The very fabric of German society was fraying, creating an unstable foundation for the years to come. It was in this chaotic environment that Adolf Hitler, a disgruntled former soldier, found his voice and his platform. Leading the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazis, he masterfully exploited public anger over Versailles, the economic crisis, and the perceived weakness of the Weimar government. His fiery speeches promised to restore Germany's honor, rebuild its military, and purge internal enemies. Step by step, through propaganda, political maneuvering, and intimidation, the Nazis gained traction. In January 1933, the aging President Hindenburg, under pressure, appointed Hitler as chancellor, believing he could be controlled. This proved to be a fatal miscalculation. Once in power, Hitler wasted no time. The Reichstag fire in February 1933 provided the pretext for emergency decrees, suspending civil liberties. The Enabling Act, passed a month later, effectively dissolved parliamentary democracy, granting Hitler dictatorial powers. Political opponents were arrested, concentration camps were established, and propaganda intensified, indoctrinating the populace with Nazi ideology. Germany rapidly transformed into a totalitarian state, with all power concentrated in Hitler's hands. The world watched, often with a mix of disbelief and indifference, as the foundations of a brutal regime were laid. Hitler's next move was to openly defy the Treaty of Versailles. In 1935, he announced Germany's rearmament, reintroducing conscription and dramatically expanding the army, navy, and air force, the Luftwaffe. This was a direct violation of the treaty, which had severely restricted Germany's military capabilities. The international community, still reeling from the Great Depression and reluctant to risk another war, offered little more than condemnations. Britain and France, prioritizing economic recovery and fearful of a repeat of the Great War, chose a path of appeasement, hoping to satisfy Hitler's demands without resort to conflict. This emboldened the Führer further. In March 1936, Hitler made another audacious gamble. He ordered German troops to remilitarize the Rhineland, a region bordering France and Belgium that had been demilitarized by Versailles. This was a direct challenge, and a pivotal moment. If France and Britain had responded with force, Hitler admitted he would have had to retreat. His army was not yet ready for a full confrontation. But again, the Western powers hesitated. France, internally divided and without British support, did not act. The Rhineland operation was a success, significantly boosting Hitler's prestige at home and confirming his belief that the Allies lacked the will to stop him. The dominoes were beginning to fall. From 1936 to 1939, Spain descended into a brutal civil war. While ostensibly an internal conflict, it became a proxy battleground for the ideologies brewing across Europe. Fascist Italy and Nazi Germany openly supported General Francisco Franco's nationalist forces, providing troops, tanks, and, crucially, air power. The German Luftwaffe's Condor Legion experimented with new bombing tactics, devastating towns like Guernica, a horrific precursor to the aerial bombardments that would define the coming World War. This conflict served as a grim rehearsal for Hitler's military, testing equipment and tactics, while Western democracies again largely stood by, unwilling to intervene decisively. In March 1938, Hitler turned his attention to Austria, his homeland. Despite the Treaty of Versailles explicitly forbidding the unification of Germany and Austria, Hitler demanded political union, or Anschluss. Austrian Chancellor Kurt Schuschnigg initially resisted, attempting to hold a plebiscite, but facing immense German pressure, he resigned. German troops marched into Austria to jubilant crowds, and the country was formally annexed. The world watched in silence, once more offering no significant opposition. For Hitler, this was another triumph, another demonstration of the Allies' paralysis, and a major step towards his vision of a greater German Reich. Emboldened, Hitler next coveted the Sudetenland, a region of Czechoslovakia with a significant ethnic German population. He claimed the German minority was being persecuted and demanded the territory's annexation. The crisis brought Europe to the brink of war. In September 1938, leaders from Britain, France, Italy, and Germany met in Munich. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, seeking peace for our time, agreed to Hitler's demands, sacrificing Czechoslovakia's territory in the name of appeasement. Czechoslovakia, a democratic ally, was not even consulted. The Munich Agreement was hailed by some as averting war, but it merely postponed the inevitable, and with a terrible cost. Chamberlain's declaration of peace for our time proved tragically short-lived. Just 6 months after Munich, in March 1939, Hitler brazenly violated the agreement, invading and occupying the rest of Czechoslovakia. This act shattered any illusions that Hitler's ambitions could be appeased. It was a stark wake-up call for Britain and France. They finally realized that Hitler's ultimate goal was not merely to unite ethnic Germans, but to dominate Europe. The policy of appeasement was abandoned, replaced by a new resolve to resist further German aggression. The focus now shifted to the next likely target, Poland, with its strategic port city of Danzig. With war looking increasingly inevitable, Europe held its breath. Then, in August 1939, the world was stunned by a geopolitical bombshell. Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, ideological enemies, signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a non-aggression treaty. Secret protocols within the pact outlined the division of Poland and other Eastern European states into German and Soviet spheres of influence. This cynical alliance removed the threat of a two-front war for Germany, clearing the path for Hitler to invade Poland without Soviet interference. It was a moment of shocking pragmatism, sealing Poland's fate and guaranteeing the imminent outbreak of a European war. At dawn on September 1, 1939, German forces launched a massive invasion of Poland. The attack was swift and brutal, characterized by a new military doctrine, the Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. Panzer divisions, supported by the Luftwaffe, punched through Polish defenses, encircling and overwhelming their slower, less mechanized army. 2 days later, on September 3, 1939, after their ultimatum to withdraw troops expired, Britain and France declared war on Germany. World War II had officially begun. The desperate hope for peace had dissolved, replaced by the grim reality of a continent once again consumed by conflict. The scale of the coming devastation was unimaginable. After the invasion of Poland, a strange calm descended upon Western Europe. This period, from late 1939 to spring 1940, became known as the Phony War, as Allied forces largely waited behind the Maginot Line, a vast defensive network. But the calm was shattered in May 1940. Germany launched another devastating blitzkrieg, bypassing the Maginot Line by invading through the Ardennes forest. They rapidly overwhelmed the Netherlands, Belgium, and then France. the speed and ferocity of the German advance shocked the world. In just 6 weeks, France, a major European power, was defeated and forced to sign an armistice. Britain now stood alone. With France fallen, Hitler's gaze turned to Britain. Operation Sea Lion, the planned invasion of the British Isles, required air superiority. What followed was the Battle of Britain, a monumental aerial contest fought over the skies of England during the summer and autumn of 1940. The Royal Air Force, though outnumbered, used radar technology and superior tactics to repel the German Luftwaffe. British pilots, often flying multiple sorties a day, bravely defended their homeland. Hitler's invasion plans were postponed indefinitely, marking the first major defeat for Nazi Germany and a crucial turning point in the war, proving that Germany was not invincible. Despite the failure to conquer Britain, Hitler remained consumed by his ideological hatred of communism and his desire for Lebensraum, living space, in the East. On June 22, 1941, Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, a massive surprise invasion of the Soviet Union. It was the largest land invasion in history, involving millions of soldiers and thousands of tanks. The initial German advance was devastatingly successful, pushing deep into Soviet territory. But the sheer vastness of Russia, the ferocity of Soviet resistance, and the brutal onset of winter soon took their toll. The Eastern Front became a meat grinder, claiming millions of lives. While Europe was engulfed in war, tensions were escalating in the Pacific. Japan, an ally of Germany, sought to expand its empire, clashing with American interests. On December 7, 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy launched a surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The attack crippled a significant portion of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, killing over 2,400 Americans. The very next day, the United States declared war on Japan. 3 days later, Germany declared war on the U.S., bringing America fully into the European conflict. The war was now truly global, with 2 vast new fronts opening up. On the Eastern Front, the war's most brutal and decisive battle unfolded in Stalingrad, a city named after the Soviet leader. From August 1942 to February 1943, German and Soviet forces fought street by street, building by building, in freezing conditions. The Soviets eventually encircled the German Sixth Army, trapping over 300,000 soldiers. Starving and freezing, they were eventually forced to surrender. The Battle of Stalingrad was a catastrophic defeat for Germany, marking the turning point on the Eastern Front. From this moment, the initiative largely shifted to the Soviets, who began their relentless push westward towards Germany. As the ground war raged, the Allies intensified their air campaigns over Germany. British and American bombers launched devastating raids on German cities, industrial centers, and infrastructure. The goal was to cripple Germany's war machine and break the morale of its civilian population. Cities like Hamburg, Dresden, and Berlin suffered immense destruction, with firestorms consuming entire districts and causing massive casualties. While controversial, these strategic bombing campaigns played a vital role in weakening Germany's ability to wage war, forcing them to divert resources to air defense and repair efforts, and slowly eroding their industrial capacity. On June 6, 1944, the largest seaborne invasion in history commenced, D-Day. Allied forces, primarily American, British, and Canadian, landed on the beaches of Normandy, France. After years of planning and immense preparations, the invasion opened a crucial Western front, forcing Germany to divide its forces. The landings were fiercely contested, with heavy casualties, but the Allies established a foothold. Within weeks, more than 1 million troops, thousands of vehicles, and vast quantities of supplies poured into France. The liberation of Western Europe had begun, signaling the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. As Allied forces advanced through France, Hitler launched one last desperate offensive in December 1944, the Battle of the Bulge. Gambling everything, German forces smashed through thinly held American lines in the Ardennes, creating a bulge in the Allied front. The element of surprise, coupled with poor weather, initially favored the Germans. However, fierce American resistance, particularly at Bastogne, and the eventual clearing of skies allowing Allied air support, ultimately halted the offensive. The battle was costly for both sides, but it depleted Germany's last reserves of men and material, accelerating their inevitable defeat. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, the Soviet Red Army had been pushing relentlessly westward since Stalingrad. They liberated vast swaths of occupied territory, exacting a brutal revenge for the atrocities committed by the Nazis. By early 1945, the Soviets were at Germany's doorstep, racing towards Berlin. The final push was a massive, bloody offensive, with fierce resistance from desperate German defenders, including children and old men. The Red Army's sacrifice and determination were immense, paving the way for the ultimate confrontation in the heart of the Third Reich. Their advance from the east was mirrored by the Allied push from the west. April 1945. The Battle of Berlin. The capital of Nazi Germany became a desolate wasteland, ravaged by artillery and street fighting. Hitler, holed up in his Führer bunker, clung to delusional hopes, issuing orders to phantom armies. The Soviets, determined to capture Berlin before the Western Allies, fought their way block by block. On April 30, with Soviet troops just blocks away, Hitler committed suicide. A few days later, on May 2, Berlin finally fell. The iconic image of the Soviet flag raised over the Reichstag signaled the collapse of the Nazi regime and the end of the war in Europe. The city, once the symbol of Hitler's ambition, lay in ruins. With Berlin fallen and Hitler dead, Germany's remaining forces officially surrendered on May 8, 1945, marking Victory in Europe Day, or VE Day. Across Allied nations, jubilant celebrations erupted, marking the end of 6 years of brutal warfare on the European continent. But the cost was unfathomable. An estimated 70 to 85 million people had died, including 6 million Jews systematically murdered in the Holocaust. Entire cities lay in ruins, economies were shattered, and societies were scarred. The world was left to grapple with the aftermath of unprecedented destruction and the moral catastrophe of genocide. The long road to recovery had just begun. World War II taught humanity devastating lessons. It revealed the dangers of unchecked nationalism, the seductive power of demagoguery, and the catastrophic consequences of appeasing aggressive dictators. It underscored the importance of collective security and the need for international cooperation to prevent future conflicts. The war also highlighted the immense human capacity for both cruelty and resilience, for destruction and unwavering courage. As the dust settled, a new world order began to emerge, designed, ironically, to prevent the very kind of conflict that had just ended. But would these lessons truly be learned, or merely remembered? The end of World War II ushered in a new era, but not one of unblemished peace. The Allied victors, particularly the United States and the Soviet Union, soon found themselves locked in an ideological and geopolitical struggle, the Cold War. While direct military conflict between the superpowers was avoided, proxy wars, nuclear arms races, and political brinkmanship defined the decades that followed. The division of Germany, the Iron Curtain across Europe, and the constant threat of nuclear annihilation created a different kind of global tension. The world had exchanged one form of great power conflict for another, albeit a colder one. The world of 1945 and the decades that followed were vastly different from the interwar period. New international bodies like the United Nations were established to foster dialogue and prevent conflict. Economic cooperation flourished, seeking to interlink nations and make war less appealing. Yet, the ghost of conflict persisted. The Cold War eventually ended, but it didn't eliminate great power rivalry. Instead, it merely reconfigured it, unleashing new regional conflicts and setting the stage for the complex, multipolar world we inhabit today, grappling with new threats and familiar patterns of aggression. Fast forward to today. The geopolitical landscape is once again fraught with tension. Major powers are flexing their muscles, borders are being challenged, and international norms are under strain. Regional conflicts escalate, humanitarian crises deepen, and the threat of nuclear proliferation remains ever present. The globalized world, while interconnected, also feels increasingly fragmented. Nationalism is resurgent in many nations, and trust in international institutions appears to be eroding. These currents, though different in their specifics, carry an unsettling echo of the early 20th century, prompting many to ask if history is indeed repeating itself. The parallels between the pre-World War II world and today are indeed striking, but it's important to analyze them carefully. Then, a humiliated Germany sought to overturn a punitive treaty. Today, some nations feel historically wronged or economically disadvantaged, seeking to reclaim perceived past glories. Then, appeasement failed to curb an aggressor. Today, debates rage over whether to confront or engage revisionist powers. Then, economic instability fueled extremism. Today, economic anxieties contribute to political polarization. The specifics differ, but the underlying psychological and political dynamics bear an uncomfortable resemblance. Are we recognizing the warning signs early enough? Just as in the 1930s, ideology plays a crucial role in shaping international relations today. Then, fascism and communism clashed with democracy. Now, different political systems and values vie for dominance, often clashing in proxy conflicts or information warfare. The demonization of the other, a key tool of Nazi propaganda, finds modern parallels in state-sponsored disinformation campaigns designed to sow division and distrust. Understanding how these ideological battles can escalate into real-world conflicts is paramount. The past reminds us that abstract ideas, when taken to extremes, can have devastatingly concrete consequences for millions. One crucial difference between the pre-World War II era and today is the existence of nuclear weapons. The concept of mutually assured destruction, or MAD, has historically acted as a powerful deterrent, making a full-scale war between major nuclear powers unthinkable. No nation can launch a nuclear attack without facing devastating retaliation. This has arguably prevented direct confrontations on the scale of World War II. However, the risk of miscalculation, accidental escalation, or the proliferation of nuclear weapons to unstable regimes remains a terrifying possibility, making the stakes infinitely higher than ever before. Another significant divergence from the past lies in economic interdependence. The global economy is far more interconnected today than in the 1930s. Major powers rely heavily on each other for trade, resources, and supply chains. A large-scale global conflict would unleash economic devastation far beyond anything seen before, potentially crippling all participants. This economic deterrent might make all-out war less likely, as the cost for aggressors would be astronomical. However, this interdependence can also be weaponized, leading to trade wars, sanctions, and economic coercion, which in turn can exacerbate tensions. Ultimately, the possibility of future conflict rests heavily on the choices of leaders. World War II was largely driven by the unchecked ambition and irrationality of a few powerful individuals. Today, the world watches as leaders grapple with complex challenges, from climate change to technological disruption, alongside traditional power struggles. The quality of diplomacy, the willingness to compromise, and the ability to de-escalate crises are more vital than ever. History warns us against the dangers of hubris, isolationism, and the failure to recognize red lines before it's too late. Leadership will be the ultimate arbiter of peace or war. So, could World War III happen? The answer is complex. While the mechanisms of warfare, the scale of destruction, and the interconnectedness of the world have evolved dramatically since 1939, the fundamental human elements of ambition, fear, and grievance remain. We have safeguards, like nuclear deterrence and global economic ties, that were absent before World War II. Yet, we also face new destabilizing factors, from cyber warfare to climate migration. The path to global conflict is rarely a sudden leap, but rather a series of incremental decisions, miscalculations, and escalating tensions. History doesn't repeat itself exactly, but it often rhymes. Ultimately, the future is not predetermined. It is forged by the choices we make today. The Treaty of Versailles taught us the perils of punitive peace. Hitler's rise showed the danger of unchecked ambition and the seductive power of hateful ideologies. The policy of appeasement revealed the cost of inaction. World War II stands as a testament to humanity's darkest capabilities, but also to its extraordinary capacity for resilience, cooperation, and sacrifice in the face of tyranny. The memory of its horrors should serve not as a prophecy, but as a perpetual warning, a call to vigilance, diplomacy, and an unwavering commitment to peace.